Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 11.
Another week of Let's Be Well Together. How are you doing, Sammy?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm great.
Good.
This is going really well, and I'm enjoying it.
Me too.
So I'm back to my list of activities, the bullet points that I keep talking about. And this time I'm in the world of environmental wellness. And there's lots of ideas on how we can help with environmental wellness, which is an issue that's really, really important to me. I feel like I didn't do enough growing up. I feel like I ignored problems. And I really worry that we're beyond the point of no return, that we're already past the point of no return. So making environmental wellness a significant issue for all of us is important. And there's another theme, which is I don't want to give into the concept that I can't help, that I'm too small to help. I think if we all do things, especially in environmental, we can make a huge difference. Okay, so the bullet point I would like to talk about is figure out how to live in harmony with the planet and other life on the planet. And of course, that is almost a platitude. It's just so general. But let's start talking about that and what more specific things we can do.
So that point made me think of when I was in San Francisco working with the Pachamama Alliance in 2018 as an intern, and I was their volunteer coordinator. Their whole message is about working with the earth, living in harmony, and working with indigenous tribes within the Amazon rainforest on how to save the planet Earth. And Minari, he was like the spiritual leader of the Amazon tribe that we worked with, and he would come in and kind of speak to us. And something
was that by Zoom in person?
No, they would fly him in.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they would fly him in, and they would fly in his son and his wife and their baby.
Great.
Yeah, so he was amazing, but he couldn't speak English, so they'd have a translator. So he came in and he spoke to us just as a group, and something he always like really tried to get across was that he that they don't need us to survive, and technically we don't need them to survive, but we need each other. Like it's
who are the us and them in that discussion?
The indigenous and the people who are not indigenous. So like us here at Pachamama Alliance, or you know, people in the street.
Let's just say North Americans.
Yeah, North Americans, anybody
who aren't indigenous.
Exactly, who aren't indigenous. Yeah, we all need each other in order to save the earth. Not one is going to, but our teamwork is going to be something that is going to move us forward, because we all know different things. The indigenous people know so much about the earth, and we have to learn so much from them in order to like move forward with our planet. And
is there a sense that we still can do that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's
a relief.
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched the year the planet paused, I think it's called. It's on Netflix, and it's all about during COVID, like that first year. Right. How when everybody was in lockdown, how the earth kind of like transformed, and you know, there was more whales in the ocean, holes in the ozone were closing up, and like all this stuff that was happening when we as like a human race paused and like took a step back and didn't, you know, put our boats in the ocean, or didn't go and do this, didn't drive constantly, didn't, you know, we went on more walks. And it's just crazy how much the earth has changed just within that year. It was kind of a glimpse into what could happen. Even in a short time. Yeah, which is interesting.
As an aside, so a few years ago, I was caught up watching the news like everyone else. And this was before the pandemic, but it had to do with politics and all that. And I was just glued to these news shows and trying to understand, trying to figure out what in the world is happening. This is nuts. But anyway, I finally broke out of that. And I started watching nature shows. So the things I watch now, the two main things I watch right now, if I'm just trying to de-stress and watch a bit of TV, it's either nature shows about animals living in nature. And actually, that's pretty surprising. It's a topic unto itself. They're a lot more vicious with each other than I thought.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And how the universe works. For some reason, I love watching about galaxies and planets and suns and all that stuff.
Right.
And yeah, so I can imagine that. Like, you made me think of whales.
Yeah.
And how the shipping slowed down and how so lanes opened up. Because a lot of the shows I was watching show the danger of shipping to whales. And, it's unbelievable how much we interfere.
And it's crazy. And so at Pachamama, it was interesting. So the story of how Pachamama was created was that there was these 3 different tribes, and they're not in my mind, like the name of them. I can't remember. Fine. So I apologize, Pachamama, if you're listening. They were at war with each other within the Amazon. And then all of a sudden, all the trees started getting cut down and, full clear cut forest. And then they realized that there's a common enemy and they need to save their home. So these 3 tribes that were at war came together to save the Amazon. And now that part of the Amazon rainforest is like untouched by humans, which is amazing. And they were able to give Mother Earth rights, similar to how, animal rights and women's rights came to be. So now that part of the world, the earth has rights where you can't just take as you want. You don't own it. It's like, you take and you give, which I thought was like really eye-opening. And I think that's something we need to do here, but it's so different, like our completely different worlds. But that's something that I really took away. And I thought it was so interesting. People
have to. And I think most people do. I mean, there's always, I don't want to get caught up talking about people who think the world is flat and that kind of stuff. There's no global warming, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think most people are starting to understand the connection. And, that's great that we're learning more study-wise. I think what we really need to do is on an individual level, start looking into what can I do in my house, whether it's reducing, whether it's how you recycle and how much water you use. Each of us acting in that way can make a massive difference.
For sure.
When you're talking about living in harmony, I don't think, like I do see how connecting with Indigenous groups would be a huge help.
Yeah.
There just seem to be, a lot of them seem to be more in tune with the nature around them.
Definitely. That's a part of their entire, their entire community is surrounded around Mother Earth. And I remember writing a paper in university, and the quote I opened up with, it was about Indigenous and what we can learn from them, like through their practices and their ceremonies. So I did it based on the sun dance. And they explained that like every step into the ground was a prayer. So when they're dancing and it's the sun dance, when they step into the earth, because that's where their prayer is going to, like they're just connected with the earth, and we have so much to learn from them.
I hope, so one of my hopes in doing this podcast is that the more shows we get out, the more interest we can generate, the more people can see that we're trying to help.
Yeah.
That it'll be easier to connect with people from different groups. And I one of the main sets of people on my list are Indigenous Canadians who I'd like to talk to about all kinds of issues. So with any luck, and if anyone out there hears this and you're willing to talk to us to help us understand perspectives, more about nature, your insights, go to our website and shoot us a note, because we'd really like to talk to a lot of different people about this.
Definitely.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today we're talking about environmental wellness with Tova Davidson. Tova leads Sustainable Waterloo Region by developing its strategic direction, supporting team members, and building key relationships throughout Waterloo Region. She brings her experience in public relations and communications to creatively approach sustainability opportunities. Paired with her business background, she collaborates with organizations in Waterloo Region to drive change locally and provincially to help our environment. Tova was the recipient of the Mayor's Award of Excellence, and she leads by example while inspiring others to do the same. Welcome, Tova.
Thanks for having me, John. Great to be here.
My business does work with Sustainable Waterloo, and you have a lot of really great programs, and I suspect a lot of people and businesses don't know anything about them. So I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about what you do. Maybe people can either sign up with you or find programs in their cities that are similar.
Absolutely. So we are a social enterprise nonprofit, which is a unique model. That means that we work like a business, but we do it to a nonprofit standard, and that we're a civil society organization. So our work is meant to make the world a better place. And our focus is in environmental sustainability and where it has co-benefits in economic prosperity, in our economy, and that can be organizational level or community level, as well as social justice. We don't think that environment, social justice, and economy are independent of each other. In fact, they are intrinsically linked to each other. And through sustainability action, we can actually build a better future for everyone. So we work, as I said, at the corporate level, like you do at your work, as well as at the community level, to look at what primarily our greenhouse gas emissions are. We work in climate mitigation. So mitigation is where you actually are trying to reduce your impact on the environment to stop the effects of climate change in the future. Adaptation is what would you do to make sure we can survive what is coming due to climate change. So we work primarily in mitigation. And our areas are energy, which includes sort of waste and water and all of those pieces, mobility, getting goods and people around, so commuting and electric vehicles and active transportation, that kind of stuff. And finally, in green buildings, how do we build the spaces that we work in better so that they have less of an impact on the environment, or even more, they can be regenerative, where they actually are contributing to a clean future and a clean economy.
Wow, that sounds amazing. When I grew up, I don't think enough people paid enough attention to the environment, including me. One of the things I see you doing is you start talking about metrics and you start explaining to businesses how they can measure. Doing that, then I think works with some of the goals that you were just talking about. So what are some of the things that are measurable with businesses?
So there's so much. And, all of what I'm going to talk about in the measurement is actually also applicable in your personal life as well. So a lot of times we know, and you would know this from the kind of work that you do, that organizations measure what matters to them, and then they manage what they have measurement on. And so when we talk to them about the impacts of their operations, and we're asking them to create measurements, the first thing we're talking about is how do we create what we call your baseline? So where are you now? It basically is a where are you now? And that baseline could be in your energy use, which converts to greenhouse gases. Not everyone understands that when we talk about carbon or greenhouse gases, it really is energy. And so if you think about all the energy an organization would use, how much does that energy generate in greenhouse gases? And every source of energy has a different, what they call emission factor. So for a kilojoule of energy from electricity is a different emission factor as a kilojoule of energy from natural gas or gasoline. So we would gather all the data about how much electricity does an organization use, how much gas in its fleet, how much natural gas for its space heating. For some organizations, if it's manufacturing, it might be how much fuel oil or propane or high heat intensity processes. And then we can use those emission factors to figure out what is the footprint of the organization now, and to figure out where their opportunities are to reduce it. And the beautiful thing is that when they start to reduce it, it means they're becoming more efficient. And it therefore starts to save them money or do all kinds of other great co-benefits. So it's really a cool way of looking at it, but it all boils down to that. If you don't have measurement, you don't know what's there and you don't manage it.
That's something that's been changing over the past while too, which is it used to be, a lot of people used to think of green as something you need to do because it's nice. And so that's fine, but business and bottom lines make that difficult. And now we're starting to see, I think, that the business bottom line can actually be helped if people start paying attention to these things.
100%. It's interesting. It used to be that energy from fossil fuels was a lot cheaper than energy from renewables. But now in Canada, we've passed the threshold where the same kilojoule of energy from renewable is now cheaper than the kilojoule of energy from fossil fuels. And that's why, that transition to a clean energy system is such an important thing to do, because it's good for our economy, besides all the jobs that we can generate doing the transition to a clean economy. And so, it's really important to know too, that when businesses are looking at where can they benefit from sustainability action, and that can be greenhouse gas cutting or any of those other things I talked about, there's actually a number of ways that organizations become more profitable, that this hits their ROI, their KPIs, all that kind of stuff. So the 5 most common is a reduced operating cost. You're using less energy, and so it costs you less to operate your business. The second is that you're actually reducing your risk exposure. I don't know if you've seen this, John, in your work, but government and regulators are now asking for mandatory reporting on risk exposure from climate change. And so you are reducing your risk exposure by proactively getting in front of that, by being able to report and actually reduce it. And one of the places where we see that is the price on carbon is going to go up. And so your business operating costs are tied also to risk exposure. Another is that it's green branding. You want to be differentiated. You want to be seen as an organization that is doing the right thing for the future, that cares about the community. Well, that's a big part of it. And if you're doing the measurement, back to your previous question, then that green branding isn't greenwashing. It's actual certifiable. Here are the numbers. Another, and actually I love this one, is that it's strong for your employee attraction and retention. People want to work places that are aligned with their values. And if they think that the place they're working is killing the environment for themselves, for their future, for their children, that doesn't feel good. So people really do want to work places that are aligned with their values. And then finally, and this is an important one for people to really consider, that when you're going to operate your business in a sustainable way, it means that you cannot operate status quo. And therefore, you must be more innovative. But that innovation doesn't stay in the area of sustainability. It actually permeates everything that you do. So your company becomes more innovative as a whole because of your sustainability action.
Well, that is amazing. And that would be a great repercussion. I'm just so you know, I'm one of those people, when I think of the bottom line, I actually think of the future bottom line too. And it doesn't do us very much good, to get on my soapbox for a second. It doesn't do us very much good to be maxing things out right now if we're destroying the future. And my own personal view is, unless we do something serious, and now we might be past the point of no return. So I'm going to keep coming back to environment as the show progresses. Just to give people a flavor, let's say that I'm a business, and let's say I've given you my metrics, and now it's time to start thinking about some practical things that I can do as part of my business. Can you maybe throw out just some examples of practical steps a business can take to help reduce energy and carbon emission?
Oh, there's so many. And that data collection that you talked about earlier, that data collection is what drives the decision as to what you do. So I'll give you some examples from our memberships, things that they've done.
Sure.
There are things like fleet conversions. So the emission factor of a kilojoule of gasoline is 10 times the emissions from a kilojoule of energy from electricity in Ontario.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about where do I get the biggest reduction for my work, it's natural gas and gasoline. They're 10 times the emissions. So, doing things like fleet conversions to an area where you are looking at electrification, or if you're a company that does long haul and heavy freight, being part of that hydrogen transition, that's a big piece of it. Even getting your employees to consider carpooling, taking transit, giving them incentives. It's interesting. This podcast of yours talks about being well. And if we have found in our TravelWise program, which we offer with the region of Waterloo, that if employees actually have active transportation to work, they're happier at work, they're more productive, they have fewer sick days, and they've lowered their carbon footprint. Like, they are so closely intertwined. But there's a specific story I want to tell you about an organization out of Cambridge, Ontario, one of the cities in our region, called Veriform. And Veriform, over a 10-year period, committed to and accomplished becoming entirely carbon neutral. So they have zero carbon emissions. 87% of that is an organic reduction, things that they actually changed in their processes and their building and all that kind of thing. And then they offset the last 13%. And Veriform is a steel fabricator, the last company you would think that would do this. Well, I have a favorite story that Paul Rack, the president, who is so amazing, told me about one of the things he did. So when Paul made his business case for any changes he wanted to make to the business, he was required by his wife and business partner, Rona, to make a strong business case financially as well as environmentally for everything he did. So he always looked at all of the financial implications, not just the cost and the base ROI, but actually downtime and human resources and all of that kind of stuff. So one of the problems he had a lot of trouble with as a manufacturer, it was his loading bay doors. And everyone can picture what I mean by that, right? Giant garage doors that get opened up winter, spring, summer, and fall. And all of your heating or air conditioning goes flying out these giant doors. And he needed his team to close the doors. So first he talked about, it's costing us a lot of money to lose all this heating. Can you please shut the door? No, didn't work. He then said, it's creating a big environmental impact. Could you shut the door? Because we are a sustainable organization and we strive for this. Didn't work. He then tried to do like some technology pieces like air curtains and all those expensive technologies to put it in. Couldn't make the business case for it. No matter what he did, he couldn't figure out how to get them to close the door. And then Paul, being the innovator, as I talked about, it drives innovation in your organization, had a realization that if he put what's called a kill switch on the doors that turned off the HVAC system when the doors were open, the people would get cold and they'd shut the door, or they'd get too hot and they'd shut the door. He said it cost him about $1,300 per door. And people now shut the door. And even if they're dressed for it, the people working behind them are like, buddy, it's cold, shut the door. And the long story of it is that he actually has, in that 10 years, doubled the size of his business, gone completely carbon neutral, not laid off a single person, and saved more than $1 million doing it.
Well, that's amazing. Let me just ask a quick follow-up based on what you said. You mentioned carbon offsets. And I think a lot of people may not know what that means. Can you just briefly describe what carbon offset is and maybe give an example of how you can do that?
Sure. So I'll give an example of not a business situation, but a personal situation. A carbon offset is something that you do. You pay someone else to do something to remove a certain amount, say a ton of carbon, on your behalf. So you still create the emission, but you're asking them to offset, get rid of it on your behalf. Now, this is sort of a last case scenario. We at SWR, Sustainable Waterloo Region, try not to use offsets as much as we can because we actually have to reduce the amount we emit. But there are some cases like for Veriform where there's some where we don't have the infrastructure yet. We don't have the processes, the energy system to accomplish it yet, to be fully carbon neutral. So offsets can be things like putting up solar panels, planting trees, that kind of stuff, wind farms, that kind of thing. And so personally, whenever I travel, I do a calculator for how much carbon is emitted for my flight because air travel is terrible environmentally. And then I go to an organization and I offset. I pay them to actually do this. And the one I love the most is called Anwatan. And what they do is they are an Indigenous community organization, and they put up solar panels in Indigenous areas and in their communities. So it actually creates for them a good financial return in the long run. So it's got a social justice element as well as an environmental element.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. And I think it's going to become part of our kind of vocabulary going forward, things like carbon offsets and all these reductions. So this has been amazing. So we're getting toward the end, and I asked all my guests the same question at the end of each interview. This is a show about wellness, and it's about different categories of wellness and the fact that it's really hard for any of us to try and keep balance between all of them. Here we go. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
100% I am. And I would think if anyone said no, they're maybe either in denial or don't want to admit it. For me, the area that I neglect is usually my own rest and recovery. As someone who works in the environmental sector, and many of us who work in all civil society, this isn't my job because it's my job. It's my job because it's my central belief system. And so I will work and work and work, and I never feel like I've done enough. And it feels so urgent and so important that I just want to do more and more and more. What I can do for that, I actually have been listening to some podcasts about how do you actually break the stress cycle. I can't get rid of the stressor yet. I'm working on it. Climate change is not going to be solved tomorrow, but I need to learn to close out the stress cycle and have that time to rest. And exercise for me is one of the biggest ways to do it. And it's one of the most effective ways.
Yeah,
so
we are both talking about the workout we just did before the interview. And I think both of us feel great because of it. I agree with you that no one can really be balanced in all the areas at the same time. And one of the reasons I like asking this question of every guest is just to show everybody that they're probably listening thinking, oh, shoot, there's a few areas I'm lacking in. Well, you're not alone. We all have that. And there's always a way that we can think of to try and foster wellness in the areas we're struggling in. So keep trying. That's all we can do.
I agree. And, I think one of the last things I'd like to say is that many of us are perfectionists, at least upon ourselves. And I regularly say to other people, and maybe I need to say to myself, stop shoulding on yourself. And that perfection is the enemy of progress. Only if we allow for progress will we ever get to where we need to be. So let perfection go and keep moving forward.
Well, that's a great way to end our interview. So thank you very much. That's it from my side. And thanks again.
Have a great night.
I'm Cameron, and welcome back to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. The theme for this week's segment is Teamwork Makes the Dream Work, and boy oh boy has that been true for me this past week. You may remember that a couple of my buddies and I have started a company doing custom music, jingles, and other sorts of sync license music, and we've been working on a few projects, one of which is almost wrapped up. After a couple of back and forths with the client, and we had sort of not quite hit the sound they were going for, and we had to do a couple of revisions and all that good stuff. We finally got the green light, like, hey, you guys hit the nail on the head, and now we're just tying up the last few bits of recording and then into mixing. So this morning, I sat down and got the old session fired up and recorded a whole bunch of vocal takes. Sent them off to my man Tim, who's going to do an awesome job mixing it all together. And he'll combine that with our guitar parts from JC and the other parts that we've written as a team, including horn parts and drum parts, the bass, keys. It's pretty sweet. It's going to be a very high energy jingle, and when it's out and about in the world, I'm sure I can tell you who it's for and what it is, and maybe you'll even hear it. For now, though, I'm going to keep it a secret. But I can tell you that the music genre for the jingle is ska, which, if you're unfamiliar, means super high energy, very fast, and really fun horn lines that really pull it together. Just a party. I'm looking forward to having that out in the world. Like I said, maybe you'll hear it. Who knows? A couple other cool teamwork making the dream work instances from this past week. The first one I want to mention is a collaborative effort with my bandmate Eric. He's been working on his solo album, and he got in touch with me to ask if I could do some choir parts for a few of the tracks. So I got started on that this weekend, and so far the drafts I've sent over seem to be in line with what his vision is. So that's great. I'm looking forward to seeing where that project goes as the songs develop further. The last cool teamwork thing I wanted to share with you from this week is an effort with my friend Charles, who's an incredibly talented mixing engineer out in the UK. About a month ago, he and I did this thing where I recorded a bit of a song vocally, including a video, and sent it over to him, and then he mixed it so he can do a before and after to showcase his mixing services. And it's a win-win. He gets to put that on his reel, and I get to put it on my reel for vocals. So, very cool. But this past week, he got in touch with me to ask if he could connect me with an up-and-coming songwriter out there who's looking for more experience writing with others and producing collaboratively, which is something that I'm also looking for. So that worked out perfectly. So she and I had a quick Instagram exchange, and we're going to try and connect via Zoom or FaceTime or something for an as close to in-person as you can get writing session, and then also send some tracks back and forth to do a little asynchronous collaboration. So I'm excited to see where all these projects go. Really cool things. One of them's almost wrapped up, which feels great. I'm excited for that to be out into the world. It's been a pretty solid week. I hope yours has been too. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. We post regularly on our Instagram account. including show previews and takeaways after a show is aired. Feel free to comment and send us your thoughts. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. We do have a Facebook and Twitter page, but Instagram is our primary social media site. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Welcome back to Move That Body with Sheila.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. So what's something you like to do to move your body?
Well, the one thing I wanted to talk about today was gardening. And I just started gardening when I owned a house. So I don't know, wasn't that long ago because I'm only 20 years old.
Yeah, right.
No, but when I started, it's kind of mandatory to take care of your grass and your gardens and stuff. And I really enjoyed it. And I was surprised how difficult it was.
Right.
So I'm like, this is a really great way to get exercise. If you don't feel like going to the gym, or you don't, you just want to be outside because it's nice and warm and sunny.
Yeah.
Great thing to do, gardening.
Yeah. I don't know much about gardening, honestly. I just remember as a little girl helping my mom. She would dig all the holes, be like, okay, I'm ready to put the flowers in.
Yeah.
And that's when I would go out and help. And it was like such a nice way to just get outside. But what do you garden?
Well, like a lot of our gardens, you have a lot of maintenance. So John's the one that actually designs the gardens and does all the, I do most of the work, but he's the one that thinks about it and what to put in and stuff. So he does all the research.
Right.
He's really good at that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of maintenance. So you've got to cut the tall grass down. Like you've got to cut off all the dead, because your flowers are growing. And the nice thing about flowers is they're all different times. So you've got things that come in the spring, and then the next one, and then the next flowers come. And if you plant correctly, you can have flowers blooming all the time.
Yeah.
So, but you do have to cut back all the dead because, it flowers for 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then it starts to go brown. And so if you don't cut it back, it doesn't look pretty.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, just something you just kind of learn with practice.
Exactly.
And just being like, I know when this flower is going to bloom, because that's definitely not something that I know, but David, my boyfriend, he loves to garden. And he just wants me to not like watch, but just like tell him where to put things, because I'm much better like visually, like looking at it and being like, no, you have to space this out better. Yeah. But he loves to he just loves flowers, loves picking out the flowers. And I'm like, how do you know which one? Yeah. How do you know what that is? It just looks like the same.
Well, it's interesting because we've, had like 4 houses. And so there's so you're at your first house and you're like, oh, I really love this flower. I want to put it in your second one. Well, it doesn't grow well. It doesn't like it there. It's like they're alive. Yeah. They know.
They are alive.
Yeah, they are. I mean, but they're human alive. They can talk to you. So it's a real work in progress. You have to see if it likes it. And you have to give it 2 years, but see if it likes it. And if it doesn't, then you just move it somewhere else. It's too much sun or too dry or not enough sun. Or so it's a patient thing that you have to do. I find it a little meditative because you do have to take your time and be careful. But, getting rid of all the weeds and digging and cutting back is a lot of work, doing the hedges, doing the grass and the edging. And so it's great exercise.
Yeah. And it's something most people probably wouldn't think of as exercise.
No.
Because it's like, you're just putting flowers in the ground, but it actually does get your body moving and gets your mind clear. Yeah. And gets you outside. So,
It's got so many healthy benefits. Yeah.
So many.
And it's good for the environment.
It is good for the environment.
Yeah.
I wonder what age that becomes, because I know like a lot of people just start gardening and it all of a sudden becomes this like
obsession.
And I'm like, when am I going to, maybe it's when I get a house.
Yeah. The thing that I think that makes it addictive is when you see results, when you see things growing and coming back, and you, because like you said, organizing them, they start to grow like monsters, so you don't realize that they're going to grow that much, and so you have to split them and do all that kind of stuff. So sometimes you may want a certain beautiful picture but this purple takes over the yellow, and like they kind of, or they grow into each other, and
right, and then you have to cut them all out,
or just cut them back, or
do something,
change your mind, because they're the boss. You can't really,
you can't control much once they start. There you go. There's a nice creative way to get your body moving.
There's a thought popped up while running. Pendulums. That's what I was thinking about when I ran today. And I really wish life wasn't so full of pendulums swinging back and forth. I really wish I could get on the right side of an equation and just stay there. A big part of the approach to wellness I'm working on has to do with trade-offs. So we identify the categories of wellness that are important to us. Then we try and figure out the activities we do and how they relate to those categories. And if we're feeling off, we try and check in and say, hey, am I missing some of these activities? Because if I'm missing some of these activities, chances are one of my areas of wellness is low. That leads into a discussion about trade-offs, right? So if I'm spending too much time on, the standard one is spending too much time on economic wellness by having to work really long hours, and that's necessary sometimes, and that's fine. But if it goes on for an extended period of time, maybe you need to bring some other activities back in. And so on one hand, you're thinking about trade-offs between categories of wellness, but there's also trade-offs within the categories. My story, my book, my approach, probably the most important trade-off that led to all this was a trade-off within the physical wellness category, and specifically about eating, the approach to eating. And that's the pendulum that I was thinking about today. So what I used to do, and for most of my life, I ate and drank what I enjoyed. I would get cravings and I would satisfy them. And that would have an impact on my weight and my health. But there was a great pleasure associated with the food and the drink and satisfying those cravings. And then luckily I saw a nutritionist. I did the right things, and not for this purpose, but when I finally got to the point where I was eating healthy food in moderation, it felt amazing. I felt energized all the time. There's just so many benefits to it. It was worth it. I felt awesome. That happened 2016, and then for 2017, 18, I was really enjoying that feeling. To be honest, though, the pendulum started to swing a bit, and at some point before the COVID lockdowns hit in March of 2019, I had already kind of teetered back to the other side where it was more important to satisfy the cravings, and I kind of forgot about that good feeling. And then it's a real catch-22, because you only get that really great feeling about being in shape when you are healthy weight, exercising aerobically, and doing some core training and probably a bit of strength too. But at the very least, for me, I need to have the right weight, aerobic exercise, and core training. And then you feel it. But if you lose it, I can't remember what it feels like, right? So then the attractiveness of that amazing feeling is easy to forget. And then it's easy to start giving into those cravings a bit. And slowly over time, from 2019 and 20 and 21, nothing dramatic. Like, I'm not terribly out of shape now. I'm still doing lots of running and I'm still exercising regularly. But honestly, I don't think I've had that feeling, that really great feeling, for a long time. And I'm more giving into my cravings after dinner, and, you know, I need something, and finally eat some little snack. And it's preventing me from getting back to where I want to be. So today I was thinking about pendulums, and I've got to find some way to start swinging my pendulum a little bit back. So within that area of physical wellness, the trade-off I have to make is I have to stop giving into my cravings. I have to stop worrying about how great it tastes and start thinking about how great it feels if I can eat healthy in moderation and do some of the other stuff I need to do. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin. It's John and Sheila here with Flip Side of the Coin, and we are going to talk about...
Well, we should probably change the name from Flip Side to John and Sheila Talk About Art.
Exactly. This is John and Sheila here with our art.
Today we're vindicated. I'm vindicated.
Yeah, we felt like we read this article and we're like, yes.
So
that's what we've been talking about.
Or maybe someone will just think I stole it, but I hope not. Anyway, so I was trying to figure out what my categories of wellness are. So for me, I ended up with the 8 that you see on the website, and one of them is artistic. It doesn't really fit. Like, it's not a comfortable fit, and maybe someone says it supersedes a bunch of stuff.
Or it's mixed in with some, like it represents a lot.
I'm the one doing the plan for myself.
Yeah, this is your book and your podcast.
Well, in my approach to life, and I decided that in my life, I recognized, having done a lot of thinking about what's important to me, art is a very important source of wellness for me.
And when you talk about art, though, you're not just talking about visual art. It's all art, vocal and musical, and right?
For sure.
Okay.
It actually, my earliest experiences were with music.
Right.
So like I mentioned on one of the podcasts with Sammy, I failed my first driver's test, and I was miserable, and like really miserable. But I went downstairs and put on some music, and it calmed me down and made me feel better. But art, all kinds of art, but including paintings and whatnot, also make a big difference. And that's why I thought, I want to put emphasis on it. I want to announce that to me, art is an important part of wellness and should be considered similar to physical health, mental health.
And as a dancer, I appreciate that, Sean.
That's, well, I mean, let's face it, I got a lot out of art because you have a certain approach to life and everything because you're an artist.
Yep.
So yeah, it's really. So then it was really great when it was right after Christmas earlier this year. And I came across an article. I usually just see articles online, but I came across an article online from the Wall Street Journal that they're starting to look at studies to show that looking at visual art, so they're not creating it, but looking at art, paintings and sculptures and whatnot, they're starting to connect that with mental health.
Which is everything that we do. We do not paint art. We look at it.
Yeah.
And we so appreciate it.
Kind of a weird twist in the article was actually that for artists, it's not always calming to make art. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not.
100%. People say that to me all the time, actually, as a ballerina, like, looks so graceful and beautiful. And it's not. It doesn't feel like that. So I can understand.
But a couple like snippets from that article included people who are in hospitals. If they had a window that could see a garden, or that they started to heal a little bit faster, they thought. They're still doing studies, so they haven't made serious conclusions, but it looks like people with a view of nature are healing faster. And so they started putting paintings in rooms and even painting walls.
Yes.
Hiring artists to come in and paint walls.
Do murals and yes.
And there were other examples where they found that people seem to be observing art and it's helping. I think at one point they mentioned, I'll get it wrong, parasympathetic, something to do with helping you calm down and slow your heart rate. So that's what I'm saying, vindication, right? Like I knew there was some connection, at least in my life.
We felt like there was something anyways.
Yeah. So it's just what it's done for me because, again, we don't like telling other people what to do. We're on a journey of our own and we're sharing that so that you can hear some of the things that work for us and decide whether you want to try them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just re-emphasized that yes, I have to keep arts as an important part of my life in order to achieve holistic wellness.
Well, for some of us, we're living art. That is what we do.
For sure. And the one thing I'm just going to read, I don't like reading too much during our sessions because most of it's talking, but I did like the ending because how can you not like what I'm about to say if you are both trying to express to people that art is important and physical activity. So the article actually concludes saying, hey guys, don't read too much into this yet. We're still at early stages on the studies. Maybe it helps. And then it says, but there are many things that are strongly scientifically backed that can improve your mood immediately, with exercise being number 1 on my list. Why don't you try both? Run, don't walk to your nearest museum.
Done.
Please remember, we're not providing advice. We're sharing our experiences and thoughts. We hope to inspire you to think about and foster wellness actively in ways that work for you. We try and get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or the things we talk about will work for you. We urge you to consult with qualified people when you need advice. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. That's it for another episode of Let's Be Well Together. We're just wrapping up with our sign-off. And I can report that I'm feeling great finally. I've had this little cough. It hasn't been serious, but it's enough to keep me out of the office. It's enough to be a bit of a pain. And now I realize after yesterday that it was affecting me a bit when I was running, because yesterday I just had an amazing run, went for a long time, and my heart rate was really low, which is a sign that I think that I'm finally over it. I've barely coughed today, so I'm really excited. I've got a busy work week. I've got a couple of really interesting interviews lined up, so I'm looking forward to an exciting week. How about you, Sammy?
Fun. Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward for the long weekend. So that's coming up this weekend, and we have a wedding, so that'll be fun. But there's also just something about Easter. I love all the holidays, but for some reason as a child, just like the idea of a bunny coming around and leaving me chocolate, I always just loved it. So
love it. It's funny because Easter to me is always, it's a really busy time in the dance world. So it was,
true.
You know, we had competitions. There's so much going on that Easter was just like, oh, I don't have time for it. But now I have time to relax. We're actually going to we're going to a condo in Collingwood this weekend. So anyways, keep going, Sammy.
No, it's all good. No, that sounds so fun. Yeah, no, I agree though. It was always like a crazy busy time. But I think it was also always around my birthday.
Oh, yes.
So there's always that kind of like the feeling of spring and my birthday, and then competitions were always kind of fun. So, and then on top of it, getting chocolate. So yeah, so I'm really excited about that. How about you, Sheila?
Well, I actually was going to say that I'm going to try not to eat any chocolate this weekend. So that's my goal. It's not that hard for me because I don't really like chocolate, believe it or not. But I'm actually going to bike to work tomorrow. So that's going to be the first time. Oh. So I've been I started a new job in November, so I haven't biked to work yet. So I'm kind of excited about that, and we're going
So that
away.
reminds me, I better run out and check your tires and whatnot tonight before you jump on the bike tomorrow.
Yeah, you better do that.
Okay.
I know.
Tomorrow will be a good day for it too, because it's going to be so sunny and nice.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
It's like 18.
Yeah, it's going to be nice, and then it's going to be rainy again. So yeah, I thought tomorrow's the day. So that's about it. And Easter and the wedding and the weekend in Collingwood, we're going to have a busy time.
Busy.
It just seems like everybody's so busy all the time, and this time in a great way. So that's fantastic. We'll wrap it up. And everybody out there, it's great to hear that you're listening and enjoying it and spending a little time thinking about your wellness. So have a great week, everybody.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.